As we continue our exploration of some of the waterways and wetlands that were important to Henry during his lifetime here in Concord, we are now at something called the Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, a federal property, and this is the Concord unit. But there are always sort of open areas here for deer and for waterfowl hunting by the American Indians before the British colonists arrived here. We now have a sort of a dirt road, and it is managed for waterfowl. This is summertime, so there are a few wood ducks around, some Canada geese, lots of red-winged blackbirds. But it's particularly in migration that this place attracts lots and lots of bird watchers. The Concord River, we were just at Egg Rock, which would be off around here, and the Old North Bridge about here. And this is the Concord River flowing downstream here towards the Merrimack River in the city of Lowell, and then it joins waters of the Merrimack from the White Mountains of New Hampshire and continues out and empties into the Atlantic Ocean at Newburyport. But this is the Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, and it's an area that we're very happy has been saved, and it's considered one of the most important freshwater marshes in all of Massachusetts. Unfortunately, we've had some invasive plant problems here. We had a big problem with purple loosestrife, but we brought in beetles and weevils that will knock that down. We now have a problem with something called American lotus from the Midwestern U.S., which is dominating and creating a lot of open areas with very little food for wildlife. And we're worried about something called Phragmites. But on the edges right now, we have a lot of cattails, and it's a very pleasant walk for people, whether you're interested in nature or not. And you get to see the horizon once you get out the middle of the marsh here. And I think it's important psychologically now and then to get out of the woods and see the horizon is very good for your brain. This is one of our invasive alien plants here. This is most of them are from Asia, but this happens to be from Europe. And this is called the glossy buckthorn. And it has little fruits that start out red and become black. And the birds unfortunately spread it all over the understory of our forests here in Concord. And this is one of the several dozen plants that Henry never knew. Oh, we actually have a native rose here. Most of what we have is multiflora rose, these are the seed heads, but we actually have, I believe it's the Carolina or Virginia wild rose here. But it's nice to see a few native plants still hanging on. Cattails are our favorite marsh plant, providing food and shelter for our native birds and mammals and insects and frogs and turtles, and we like the cattails. And you see that little white fluff there, that is used to line the nests of many of our vertebrate species at times. If you swing to the right, you'll see some bushes with big globular or globe-shaped white flowers, and those are known as the button bush, and it was a plant very familiar to Henry. And as he went canoeing up and down the rivers here in the Concord area, he would see this in bloom in mid to late summer. And apparently those globes could be used as buttons on cloth coats and shirts in the old days. So here we are noticing the cattails in the foreground, but that yellowy green you see in the distance are the leaves of the invasive alien American lotus that has come in from other states west of the Appalachian Mountains. In the distance we see several hills. There's three big hills. The area is known as Ball's Hill, and this was about to be developed into 40 McMansion mega estates. But the landowner gave a bit of a window and some time for one of our local conservation organizations protecting Thoreau country called the Concord Land Conservation Trust. We were given a half-price deal, and this was raised locally in the Concord area. It was raised by people that care a lot about the heritage and the natural heritage of the greater Concord area, or what we often call Thoreau country.
I know there's lots of red-winged blackbirds here.
Red-winged blackbirds, yes. You know them?
I do,
Oh, yeah.
But I bet you don't know the female. See here's the, let me show it over here. This is the red-winged blackbird, the male.
Yeah.
And some people know that. My neighbor came up and said, I saw this bird with red stripes on its back. And I said,
Yeah.
Great Meadows. I bet it was
the
red-winged
wing,
blackbird.
yeah.
But look at the female. Looks like a big sparrow.
Oh, wow.
And as you walk along the dike here, you'll see some of those things. And many people call it, Peter, here's a picture of some big sparrow. I can't find it in my book, but it's not a sparrow. It's a,
And what is that gorgeous bird underneath it?
That's the grackle. It's not considered gorgeous, but
Well,
in good light
the
it is.
color in that light, it's beautiful. Yeah, grackles
It
are
is.
not beautiful.
And then there's another bird you'll hear chug. It has a wonderful call called the marsh wren, and this is one of the
Yes.
very few places in all of Massachusetts that we have marsh wrens.
I know.
And they gurgle.
They're
I mean,
hard to
sometimes
see.
they're hard to see.
Very
They'll
hard
get
to
up into a
see.
cattail now
Yep.
and then they'll just dive down. And they build 3, 4, 5 nests. The male does every spring in the cattails.
Okay.
Why would it do that? Because there's a predatory snake, not poisonous, called the northern water snake. And it'll go up and it'll want to eat the eggs or the babies of any nesting songbirds at random.
Yeah.
And as if it builds one nest, the chances are pretty good the snake's going to find it.
Yeah,
But if
right.
it builds a whole bunch of nests that are empty with no eggs, the snake's going, well, something's
I
wrong
did
here.
manage
I'm going to go
see-
something else.
I did manage to see them last week when I was here, right up here on the.
The
on
marsh
this, on
wrens.
this- Yeah, on this side.
And have you seen the frogs here? The ones
Yeah.
that go jug-a-rum, jug-a-rum, jug-a-rum are the bullfrog. But then there's
Ah.
another one that sounds like a banjo being plucked, and that is the green frog that we have here.
And then I saw a bunch of, I think, muskrats. They weren't beavers.
There's muskrats
Muskrat.
and beavers both here.
Yeah,
The
no,
muskrat has a thin tail.
so it was a
The
muskrat.
beaver has a wide
Right.
tail, but there is one beaver lodge
There's
on
a
the
beaver
left with
lodge,
sticks.
Right. Yep.
The muskrat always uses like cattails or
Okay.
herbaceous vegetation. And this is a relative, this looks like Queen Anne's lace, which is the ancestor of the wild carrot, the big orange carrot that we eat. But there's some lookalikes like this. This is not the poison hemlock, but it's a very close relative and probably is poisonous that grows here on this strip. And this is one of the few places, I just forget the name of this offhand, but look at the little red ladybug there. Ladybugs are beetles. And now if this was Queen Anne's lace, it would have a little purple spot in the dead center. And it is edible, but not this particular one. Oh, there's a great blue heron flying off. Seems upset. You can see here we've got a problem with all of this monoculture. You know, in nature we don't like one species of plant to just dominate any particular habitat. We want a variety of plants providing different foods and nectar and whatever at different seasons. But so we have our native cattails. We wish the whole Great Meadows was cattails with a little bit of open water here and there. But now this very aggressive plant, and it's not from Asia or Europe where most of our invasive plants come from. This is actually from Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, places like that. And it does have a pretty flower. Like most invasive plants that become ecological disasters in a different state or country, do have a horticultural value, and pretty soon we'll show you a close-up of the flower of the American lotus. And it just escaped from somebody's garden, and this may be one of the very few places we have it in Massachusetts. But we can see that it is a problem, and we're trying to devise a strategy to maybe get rid of the American lotus and allow the cattails to reoccupy most of this marsh. Now the reason the Canada geese concentrate out here, because we've got water out there. Coyotes don't swim. Their main predator at night would be the coyote or eastern coyote. And so here, whatever Canada geese around can see any coyote running up here or running up the other way to get them, and then they can disappear into the water and be free. But this is an anti-nocturnal predator defense to hang out in the middle of this trail in the middle of the marsh. Pickle leaf down in here. This is a nearby lotus. It may not be. So this is the Concord River behind this wall of trees over here. These will be red maples and silver maples along the Concord River. And that's Punkatasset Hill off to our west, part of the Esterbrook Woods. And then we see the various bumps here of the what we call the October Farm riverfront, which was purchased by the Concord Land Conservation Trust at great expense. And just beyond that, the other side of these hills is the latest Massachusetts Audubon Society sanctuary known as Brewster's Woods. Brewster was a Well, he came along after Henry Thoreau. There goes a wood duck right there, a little tiny black duck, relatively small compared to a mallard. That was a female wood duck. Those are the pickerel weeds. Those are native. We like having them around as part of a mix of dozens of freshwater species of plants, which we would like to have here. And I can see there's some bees in there. There's a lot of dragonflies. Now, if you have dragonflies, and you can see them skimming around here, flying around, dragonflies have compound eyes, and they're major predators of smaller insects, especially mosquitoes. So if you're in an area that has dragonflies present at the time you're there, as we have right now, you almost could strip naked and not get a mosquito bite. Are you getting any mosquitoes? None, right? Told you.